Of girls who are told they'll never be mothers. Also coming up, a political exhibition. A legal ruling means a collection of precious Crimean artefacts will be returned to Ukraine and not Russia. Dancing to a rather familiar beat, we meet the most dedicated BBC News fan if his moves are anything to go by. Well, it was the tiniest glimmer of hope in the horror of the Syrian war, but the ceasefire between government forces and rebels in Aleppo broke down just hours after it started. Instead, heavy shelling, gunfire and airstrikes on rebel areas. Buses which were due to start bringing people out this morning have left the area. Among those due to leave, 5,000 rebel fighters. But the Syrian government also wants its injured fighters from nearby rebel-enclosed towns to be guaranteed a safe exit. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucet, reports.
A rare quiet became another day of war, shattering a ceasefire only hours after it started, and crushing a bit of hope that the agony of Aleppo was over. Especially for those still trapped in what's left of their homes in the east of the city.
Oh my God. All the people were, let's say, psyched and happy with the agreement about leaving and evacuating the city, finally. And they were just preparing themselves, and they think that the regime is going to take a ground force.
Good morning, my friends. Tens of shells are raining down on the besieged areas in Aleppo. There are injured in the field hospitals, injured as a result of the bombardment by the regime forces and allied Iranian militias.
And yet, before first light, the green government buses had pulled up to the edges of East Aleppo. That was the deal. They waited and waited. Rebel fighters and their families were to board these buses, bearing the flag and the face of the man they fought for 4 years, to be taken to an area still in opposition hands. But the deal brokered by Russia and Turkey broke down. President Assad's ally, Iran, imposed more conditions. This could take time. A people displaced and dispossessed are desperate to end this anguish. In recent weeks, more than 100,000 escaped the front lines of East Aleppo. Many did not. The UN is raising concern about alleged massacres of civilians by pro-government forces. A grave accusation dismissed today by President Assad.
If we liberate Aleppo from the terrorists, there would be, the Western officials and the mainstream media, they're going to be worried about the civilians. They're not worried when the opposite happens, when the terrorists killing those civilians.
His forces have their enemy cornered. But these latest pictures from the Syrian army show they're not yet ready to give up this fight. And the rebels are pushing back.
Well, we can speak to Lise from Beirut now. She was in Aleppo until very recently. Lise, so after all this, what hope of any ceasefire now?
Well, there was a statement a short time ago by President Erdogan of Turkey and President Putin of Russia saying they had spoken. Their countries were the main brokers of this deal. They said they still hoped that what they called a partial truce would be implemented and that both civilians and fighters would be evacuated from the last of the rebel enclave in East Aleppo. But it's not surprising in the terribly tangled conflict that is Syria. There's lots of people now who are looking at this deal and saying, well, it doesn't actually meet their expectations. It's understood that Iran is insisting on a simultaneous evacuation from a rebel besieged area. And the government itself is now saying, well, it has to be more comprehensive. So the government seems to be trying to exact the greatest price possible for the rebels that they have cornered. And the rebels are seeming, despite the fact that they are so cornered, they now seem to be fighting back with firing rockets and mortars into West Aleppo, and there was a car bomb as well today.
And Lise, you call it tangled. How does what we're seeing in Aleppo fit into what is going on in the rest of Syria?
Well, Aleppo has become the symbol of suffering across Syria. So much has been focused, both the military might of the Syrian army and all of its allies has been focusing on it. The world's humanitarian agencies are focusing on what's been happening in Aleppo. But while Russia and Syria took their eye off what was happening in Palmyra, the so-called Islamic State stole a march and recaptured an area, including the Roman ruins they lost just months ago. And they've now regained territory at a time when the world is saying that so-called Islamic State is on the back foot. Aleppo is not the only place in Syria which is still driven by conflict, but it is the most important battle. It was, we thought, drawing to a close, but it's not over yet.
Lise, thank you very much. Lise Doucet in Beirut. Let's just show you what's been going on in Paris regarding Syria. A few minutes ago, the lights of the Eiffel Tower, there you can see it, they're turned off as a gesture of support for the people under bombardment in Aleppo. The mayor of Paris said she hoped it would alert people across the world to the need for international action to end the conflict in Syria. We'll have more on Syria coming up later in the programme. Now, it's a rare scientific advance and a breakthrough in women's fertility. For the first time, doctors have frozen ovarian tissue from a girl who'd not yet reached puberty and then, more than 15 years later, used it to make her fertile again. Moazza Al-Matroushi, who's now 24, is believed to be the first in the world to have a baby after having an ovary frozen so early in her life. Medical correspondent Fergus Walsh was given exclusive access to the British and Danish medical teams who pioneered the new approach.
Every baby is special, but this little boy really is astonishing because he is the result of frozen ovarian tissue taken from his mum when she was just 9. Against the odds, Moza has become a mother.
It's something miracle that I have my baby now because it was so long January that we are waiting for this nice result.
As a child, Moza, who's from Dubai, had a serious blood disorder. She needed a bone marrow transplant, which would make her infertile. So prior to chemotherapy, she had her right ovary removed. Slices of ovarian tissue were taken, each containing follicles with immature eggs, which were frozen. 2 years ago, 4 were stitched onto her failed left ovary in transplant surgery in Denmark. Within months, she began ovulating and her premature menopause was reversed. Eggs were retrieved and used in IVF treatment.
Good morning, Mummy. Good morning.
Her doctor at the private Portland Hospital in London says this is a major advance in safeguarding women's fertility.
I'm absolutely overjoyed for this patient. It offers fantastic hope for a lot of children around the world who need life-threatening treatments for cancer or other major illnesses.
These are cow ovaries, but it's the same process involved in preparing human tissue for freezing.
We believe there are thousands of cases in storage across the world for tissue that has been preserved for young girls and young women who are likely to have lost their fertility as a result of chemotherapy treatment or radiation treatment.
When Moza had her ovarian tissue frozen in a tank of liquid nitrogen like this 15 years ago, when she was just 9 years old, it was a rare and pioneering procedure. Back then, some scientists thought the tissue would perish long before she'd want to start a family. Well, now she's shown what's possible and given hope to thousands. What message does your baby son send to young girls who may be going through cancer treatment now?
There is another chance and there is another hope, because my hope it was I have a nice child like this baby.
Moza says she hopes to have another child and is looking forward to going home to Dubai as soon as her son is old enough to fly. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
A look at some of the day's other news stories. Survivors of the plane crash that killed 71 people in Colombia have returned home to Chapeco in Brazil. Among those killed were 19 from the Chapecoense football team en route to a cup final. In all, 6 people survived, including 3 from the team. The lower house of the French Parliament has extended the country's state of emergency until July. The powers were originally brought in after the Paris attacks in November last year and will now be in place until after the 2017 presidential elections. France's upper house, the Senate, will review those measures tomorrow. 13 women who accuse Bill Cosby of sexual assault should be allowed to testify at his forthcoming trial, according to a prosecutor. The American entertainer's legal team have claimed the women's testimonies too hazy and unreliable and shouldn't be heard in court. The pre-trial hearing is continuing. Well, the US Federal Reserve has just announced a hike in interest rates for the first time in a year. They've been at near 0% since the financial crisis in 2008, when they were cut to help boost the US economy. Well, let's go to Michelle Fleury. She's outside the Federal Reserve in Washington. Hello to you, Michelle. I mean, not much surprise at this particular rate rise, but why have the Fed done this now?
Well, if you look at the US economy, it's been improving, moving in the right direction, if you like, for some time now. The employment picture is, well, America is pretty close to full employment. That was reflected in the statement that the Federal Reserve released with its decision. They also noted that inflation, although it's slightly below their target, is also travelling in the right direction, picking up slightly, moving closer to the point where they feel they can remove some support from the economy. The question always going into this meeting really was what they would say about the outlook for the future. Would they reflect what markets have already priced in, which is Trump's economic policies, the impact that they might have on the economy? Based on the statement, they're not reflecting that at the moment. Also, in terms of what they see as the rate path going forward, they continued to say that rate rises will be gradual. The pace of future rises will be gradual, possibly the size too, because they see the interest rate path here in America remaining below historical norms for quite some time.
Michelle, just looking at my screen, you can see this news of a 0.25% rise being flashed around the world in so many languages. Why does it matter so much?
Well, I mean, for Americans, it's very simple. It has to do with the rate at which they can borrow money, the rate at which they can earn returns on their savings, mortgage rates, all of that. From abroad, a lot of it has to do with financial investments. When you lower rates, certainly here in America, a lot of investors who are looking for returns went elsewhere, possibly taking greater risks, but also hoping to get greater rewards. Some of that money went to emerging markets, for example. Now that they start to see interest rates going up, they may think, well, perhaps we can get a better rate of return here in America, and that's why you can start to see this shifting of funds around the globe, and that can have a big impact.
Michelle, thanks very much. Michelle Fleury there in Washington. Now, it's common to have communication problems after a severe stroke, and not being able to speak at all is, of course, devastating, and that's what's happened to a British man, Graham, 2 years ago. Since then, he's only been able to communicate by slowly tapping out words on a tablet. Then the BBC introduced him to 2 designers who, with the help of technology and some old video recordings, have made it possible for him to use his voice again. This is his story.
When Graham lost his voice, I said to all my friends and family, get a recording of your husband or boyfriend, because my God, did I miss that good night, I love you. That was horrendous, not having his voice.
Good to see you. Hi Graham, hi Zoe. This is Ross.
The most frustrating thing for Graham at the moment is that people are treating him like he's brain dead when he's not. The key thing is that he can say just a quick statement whenever the urge comes across.
Hello, here's me, Graham, sitting with my daughter Louisa. Yeah, usual self, just like at home.
But we did.
You like the boots?
I love it.
You're not supposed to throw stones at the video camera. Yeah. Christmas Eve, you know?
That's going to be great for Gabe. That is a strong look.
Dad, say something.
I'm knackered. Will you quit flashing?
I told you it's naughty. It is so naughty.
Yay!
And it's really nice looking at these lovebirds.
It's just amazing to actually see what he's really like.
Or what he used to be like.
Yeah, but he's still there.
Just he can't get it out.
Yeah.
It's 1:45 and I think I've written the code.
I definitely felt a very, very strong emotional connection to this story. You could be like your dad or your brother or anyone. We found clips of you and your own voice from the home videos that we've dug out the attic so that they're actually you. We went through about 50 hours of footage. It was really nice for us actually to hear you speak and see you move, and that was really great. All right, Graham, over to you, I guess.
I love you, Zoe. I love you, Zoe.
Oh, what do you keep president? I'm going to hear you. I don't care what you say.
Have a well-earned rest and a drink.
Thanks, guys.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
I love you, Zoe. See you tomorrow.
Now, let's return to events in Aleppo and the breakdown of the deal to evacuate rebel fighters and civilians from the east of the city. The truce was originally brokered on Tuesday by Russia and Turkey. Russia is allied to the Syrian government. Its media refers to recent events as the liberation of Aleppo. Turkey sides with the rebels. Here are our correspondents Sarah Rainsford in Moscow and Mark Lowen in Istanbul.
The statement on that is coming from the Defence Ministry here, who have said that the rebels in the enclave of eastern Aleppo there are to blame for the breakdown of the ceasefire. They say that buses were sent in for the evacuation of civilians and those fighters who wanted to leave, but that those buses were shelled by rebel forces. They say that they took the opportunity of the brief ceasefire to regroup. And when they did attack, then Syrian government forces responded to that.
Turkey is putting the blame for the collapse of the truce deal in Aleppo very much on the shoulders of Syria. But there is a conspicuous silence about Russia since the Turkey-Russia relationship was restored a couple months ago, after the relationship broke down when Turkey downed that Russian jet about a year ago. Turkey has really, critics believe, Turkey's been rather sort of sycophantic towards Russia. It's been far too silent about Russia's continuing bombardment in Aleppo and other parts of Syria, and very much the rhetoric from the Turkish government is this is Syria's fault. And they're very silent about Russia.
So what about Syria's ally, Iran? With me is Gia Gol from the BBC Persian service. First of all, Gia, I mean, how much does Iran, we think, have to do with the fact that this ceasefire did not happen?
Obviously, this ceasefire was brokered by Turkey and Russia. And we are hearing today, Iranian-backed militia, Shia militia, they have demanded they have to be able to evacuate their own wounded from Kefria and Foua, two small villages in west of Idlib, which has been surrounded by rebels for months. They said if they don't allow that happen, they will not allow this, the rebels leave east of Aleppo. But don't forget, there is so many different factions within the rebels. There is no guarantee those groups who are surrounding those two villages are from the same factions who are fighting the government in the east of Aleppo. That's why I think definitely many of those people who are watching, and Iranian openly they say, if you wanted this to happen, you have to allow us or help us to evacuate our own injured.
And this has reminded us of how significant Iran's role is in Syria.
Well, Iran in the past few years, they have invested billions of dollars despite their economic sanction because of the nuclear program. They poured in their money and they poured in their proxies, Hezbollah, the battle-hardened Shia militia from Lebanon, in the same time from Iraq, those people who have been fighting the other groups, they poured in those people. There is an estimate around 6,000 to 8,000 Iranian militia on the ground, and this victory, many experts believe actually it was the result of those people. They are stronger and they're fighting harder than even Syrian army. That's why Iranians have a say on the ground. And as you just mentioned, obviously, it is Iranian proxies and Iranian Shia militia commanders on the ground who have a say, not Russian.
And why are they doing this? What is the Iranian strategy in Syria?
Well, obviously, Iran doesn't just look at Syria. They look at it as a regional in the Middle East. This is a rivalry between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and other major power in the region. And Iran sees Syria as a bridge between Hezbollah in Lebanon and with Iran. They are Shia, and obviously we're talking about this Shia crescent. And Iran in the past, how to say, I mean, maybe numbers of years has been supporting Assad. And many experts on the ground, they say actually, in fact, Assad and Syria paying the price for being ally of Iran. That's why they've been under extreme pressure. That's why Saudis and Turks and other groups have been supporting the rebels fighting against Iran. And even today, the president, defense minister, speaker of the parliament, they all pretty much, they declared victory in Aleppo, and they sent the congratulatory messages to Bashar Assad. And even one of the former commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, he said the new American president should pay attention to Iranian power in the region.
Jia, thank you very much, Jia Gol. Now, a court in the Netherlands has ruled that a priceless gold collection from museums in Crimea should be returned to Ukraine and not Russia. The Scythian gold artefacts include pots, gold leaf and other ancient objects, some of which date back to the 4th century BC. They were loaned to a Dutch museum for an exhibition not long before the Ukrainian peninsula was occupied by Russia in 2014. The court ruled that Crimea was not a sovereign country and so could not claim the treasures as cultural heritage. Well, the decision unsurprisingly caused mixed reactions. First, Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Culture.
Crimea is a part of Ukraine. It's only our national authorities who can decide to which museum should they return. As you know, Crimea is occupied by Russian Federation, and we have no access to Crimea. We cannot protect our cultural heritage in Crimea.
I feel disappointed, but I was partly, 50-50, so I was not sure about any decision. And my deep feeling is that I will wait for better decision. One day it will come, I'm sure. So I hope one day items will return to their land, to their homeland.
Now, some footage of what appears to be one of London's most dedicated BBC News fans, if his dancing is anything to go by. A correspondent for the Polish press agency Jakub Krupa filmed this man in Leicester Square really enjoying a rather familiar theme tune. Amazing dedication and enthusiasm there from that anonymous dancer in London's Leicester Square. Now, just one line coming in from the AFP news agency regarding the situation in Syria, because we're learning that Turkey, Russia and Iran will be holding a meeting in Moscow on the 27th of December to discuss a political solution over to the conflict in Syria. That's according to the Turkish government, saying we are striving to secure a ceasefire throughout the country and for negotiations for a political solution. Thanks very much for watching BBC World News today.